Now then, folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the Movies. I'm back with you for another ranking video. Really enjoying making these at the moment. Today we're going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's filmography. He's one of my favourite filmmakers and directors, really, of all time. He's in my top three, along with Cameron and Fincher. And for a while there, he was my number one favourite, but I think after seeing his last couple of films, it kind of just had me sort of reevaluate a little bit. And I think David Fincher's got that top spot at the minute, but he comes in at a solid number two. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't absolutely adore the guy's filmography, and even the ones that are at the bottom of this list, I still got something out of. I'm really excited as well because we're going to be getting a new film from him this summer with Oppenheimer. The cast looks fantastic. Obviously, the story sounds really interesting. And even if he does something a bit wacky, a bit zany with it, like he did, in my opinion, with Tenet, I still think it's going to be, an absolute sort of triumph for the film in terms of, like, its visual style, its direction, and whatever else. And I'm really excited to see what we get with that. It's also going to be his first collaboration with Universal as well, because as I understand it, he's had a bit of a parting of the ways with Warner Brothers, who he's made the majority of his films of the last 20 years with. So it'll be interesting to see him work with a new studio as well, see if there's any sort of like noticeable differences or anything like that. Be interesting to see. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how I would currently rank Christopher Nolan's filmography. So as I do when I make all these lists, I quote Carlino 9 and I say, it's not the right list, it's just my list. Your royalty check's in the post, Carl. It's not really. But cheers for such a great line that I have to steal it. And we'll come in with the 11th film on this list for me, and given the comments that I've made, and if you've seen my review from a few years ago, it will not surprise you that in at number 11 is Tenet. So this is Christopher Nolan's most recent film, obviously besides the upcoming Oppenheimer. When I saw this film, I think I gave it a better review than I think it deserves now, and I think I was having almost a bit of a fanboy moment with it, and a sort of a, oh my god, it's Nolan's newest film, it's it's great, it's and then when you reflect and you think and you're like, was it? And for me, this one has really settled at the bottom of the pile. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some absolutely brilliant moments. The opening sequence with the action set piece in the orchestra auditorium at the beginning, as we're meeting John David Washington. I think he is called John David Washington, isn't he? I hope I've got his name right. But we're meeting his protagonist, and then the film sort of sets up the mystique and the mystery and the intrigue. You're going to hear a word a lot, Tenet, and he goes and meets the young lady. I forget her name. I'm so sorry, but she's the one that played Fleur in Harry Potter. He goes and meets her, and she gives him some exposition, and it sort of moves on, and we start to get introduced to, like, Robert Pattinson's character, and then the villain of the piece, played by Kenneth Branagh, and it really lost me about halfway through. Not in the sense of that I didn't understand it. I understood what was going on, and I understood what he was trying to achieve. But when like when a band tries to do an experimental album, or they do something completely out of what they would normally do. Fleetwood Mac and Tusk is a perfect example of this. They've done, obviously Fleetwood Mac's had many iterations, but the most successful commercially one is the Stevie Nicks fronted lineup with Christine McVie, Buckingham, and then obviously Fleetwood and Mac. 1975 they brought out as they call it, the White Album, Fleetwood Mac. Radio friendly, commercial pop, blues influenced soft rock. They follow that up with the tremendous Rumours. And again, it's more of the same, but just builds upon what they did before. And then they do Tusk. And don't get me wrong, I am a Tusk lover, but yeah. And it's kind of like that with this. It's, they've really given Christopher Nolan free rein to do what he wants to do with it. And it lost me halfway through. I came out of it thinking, like, wow. All right, okay. But I was telling myself, no, I love it. It's a Christopher Nolan film. And then as time's gone on, I don't love it. It's just all right. Swiftly moving on now to number 10 is his second most recent film, and that is Dunkirk. Now, I absolutely loved the visual style of this. I thought that the acting was absolutely superb, and that, it really sort of conveyed just how harrowing and how scary and how much of a, for better or for worse, an adrenaline rush it would have been to have been in that situation back in World War Two. And everybody in the film, from Cillian Murphy to, again, Kenneth Branagh to even Harry Styles, everybody puts in a shift. What I didn't like about the film was the editing of how he was telling the story. Not so much the editing of the film, but like we've got a story that takes place over 3 minutes, one that takes place over 3 days, and one that takes place over 3 weeks, sort of thing. And how they were all edited together. I found that a little bit disjointed, and felt that for me it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. But absolutely, just visually brilliant stuff, and the emotional impact of the film was just absolutely just it left me speechless when I watched it in the cinema. I went with Phil and I went with Laura, and we all came out and went, that was incredibly tough to watch for very many various different reasons. But yeah, having watched it again since and reflected on it, some of the choices that were made in the storytelling and in the editing are what's maybe not done it for me. Now, in at number 9, this is where it gets controversial. I assure you the rest of the list is fairly smooth sailing, but this is definitely where it's going to be a bit of a controversial pick for some. I've put Memento here. Now, hear me out. Please don't click off the video. It is a fantastic film. There is no denying that, and it is, it's really cleverly done. The acting from obviously Guy Pearce and Joey Pantoliano and Carrie-Anne Moss and the like. It's fantastic. I understand the concept, so it's not one of those where I'm just not getting it or anything like that. I get that, colours happening forwards and black and white, and X, Y, and Z, and I understand, and I've seen it 3 or 4 times now. And perhaps it was one of those films that for me was built up and put on a pedestal, maybe higher than it needed to be. But again, it was one that Phil introduced me to, and Phil and lots of other people have gone, you need to watch this film if you've enjoyed the Batman trilogy, if you've enjoyed Inception, if you've enjoyed whatever else, you've got to watch this earlier one from his filmography, because it'll absolutely just blow your mind. And I think so many people telling me that the film was going to just absolutely just make me go, when I watched it, I was severely underwhelmed the first time I watched it. And then, as I've had subsequent watches, like I say, I've watched it, maybe 3 or 4 times or whatever, sort of, it's grown on me, and I enjoy it, and I can appreciate the effort that's gone into it, and I can marvel at the filmmaking, and I can think, wow, for that budget, you've been able to achieve this, and absolutely just, really can applaud its strengths. But there's just something about it for me that just doesn't quite tick the box, and I feel a little bit like I said when I reviewed No Time to Die. I feel sad about it because so many people, cite this to be, top 3 Nolan, and it's his best and whatever else, and I didn't get that out of it. So it's like, oh, I'm missing out. But yeah, absolutely, I would put in at number 9, Memento. So I kind of lied. Maybe this one will be controversial because of where I've put it ahead of the list. But then again, I suppose everything from here on out might be slightly controversial if it's come ahead of Memento. But in at number 8, I put Insomnia. So this one is kind of like it's the black sheep of the Nolan films, really. It's the one that often gets forgotten, and it's not easily to get a hold of on physical media these days. It's out of print, I think, on DVD, and I think there's a European Blu-ray you can get, which is what I've got from memory of it. But yeah, it's Al Pacino, and he's playing a cop that's investigating a case up in Alaska, and it's the time of year where it's basically daylight all round, and he's accidentally shot somebody, and he's he's dealing with that, and it's causing him to have insomnia. Well, he's then sort of on the hunt for this killer that's played by Robin Williams up there, and it's inspired casting. It really, really is, and they play off each other so well, and the sort of the game of cat and mouse that they have, and Hilary Swank's in there as well as one of the secondary characters, and Yeah, it's just a really great film, is this. You can tell that this is a film that Nolan's been given to direct rather than perhaps one that he's maybe sought out and sort of shaped the production of. It's pre-Batman, it's pre The Prestige, and I think it's pre him having his own sort of prestige and his own, gravitas as a filmmaker sort of thing. But nonetheless, I enjoy it just that little bit more than the Memento, but don't enjoy it as much as sort of like his Batman work onwards, as it were. And so that's why in at number 8, I've put Insomnia. In at number 7, I toyed whether or not I include this one on the list. This was his breakthrough film, was this, and it was all sort of done on a really low budget, and he's got like family members and friends involved and things like that, and people that he's studied with. And the first time I ever watched it was when me and Phil did a Christopher Nolan marathon of all his films that he put out up to the release of Dunkirk, and we went to the cinema to see Dunkirk, as I've talked about earlier in this video. And it was the first time that I watched it. I had to import a European DVD because you can only get this on Criterion US Blu-ray, and obviously as we know they're not region free, and I don't have a region free Blu-ray player at the minute, so I've got this DVD of it, and it does for me. But it's a great little film, and it's all in black and white, and it's sort of about a guy who likes to sort of break into people's houses, maybe just for the thrill of it more than anything else, and it's the people that he gets involved with, and it all sort of ends up culminating in this story that he's telling to the police at the end. And you just don't believe, even though you've watched it with your own two eyes, you don't believe what's coming out of his mouth, and you can see the desperation and the frustration in the in the story that's being told as the twists and the turns reveal themselves throughout the film. And to say it's such an incredibly low budget film, I would say that it is a stronger film than any of the films that I've mentioned thus far on this list. And so that's why I'm putting at a number 7, Following. Check it out if you've not seen it. I really thoroughly recommend it. Check it out. In at number 6, I think this was kind of where Christopher Nolan sort of took off outside of Batman and sort of became the sort of like almost the director that you expect a special event from. You've got your Jim Camerons and again I'll mention David Fincher and Steven Spielberg, and there's all these directors, isn't there, when they bring a film out, it's an event, and it's the new insert event director here. And I think this is the film that sort of solidified him as one of those guys, and it's Inception. I really like the premise of Inception. The ensemble cast is superb, and obviously you've got Leo DiCaprio, Tom Harvey, Elliot Page, Michael Caine, Ken Watanabe, so many, Cillian Murphy again. There's just so many people in this film, and they all bring their absolute A game. I really do enjoy the premise of going into the dreams and then having to go deeper into the dreams to to get what they need from the subconscious, or to to be able to survive and whatever else. And it almost kind of feels like a time travel movie. Like, it's got the same sort of energy as a time travel movie, but it's obviously it's its own thing. And I really like the fact that obviously the famous ending is it's not often that I like an ending where they go, right, okay, well, it's up to you to decide how it ends. I really like it when storytellers fully close the book and go, and that's the way it was. But with this one, I really like that it's left open, and I like that as well as Christopher Nolan's come out and said how he perceives the ending to be, but ultimately that it's still open-ended. And again, it's something that a concept that he went back to with The Dark Knight Rises as well, which leads me beautifully into number 5 on this list, which is The Dark Knight Rises. And this is a film that I have so much fun with. I love Batman. Batman is my favourite comic book character. It's my favourite fictional character. And I will watch, read, consume anything Batman related that they put out. Just ask the missus, just ask my friends. I'm a Batman nut. And I absolutely adore Nolan's take on it. Batman Begins is my favourite Batman film of all time. But The Dark Knight Rises, for me, had a really just something really special about it. It concluded the trilogy sort of in a really sort of grand way. It gave us an iconic performance of a villain, and really put Bane on the map again, I would say, because he sort of, I would say he was on the map for comic fans in the 90s with Nightfall, and then the animated series and Batman and Robin didn't do him any favours, but Christopher Nolan really gave him his due, and Tom Hardy brought an excellent performance, an interesting performance, really. It's certainly a decision to use that voice for the character and, to play it the way he did. But, we're here still decade on from that film talking about it. Christian Bale is again superb as Batman. All the returning sort of cast, the characters are fantastic. Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman. Anne Hathaway, in my opinion, steals the show as Catwoman. She's great. And this was one of the first times ever that I had multiple viewings of a film in the cinemas. I was so taken with it. I think I ended up seeing this in the cinemas over its sort of like 6-month theatrical run about 5 times. So averaging, once a month to go and see this film, and just absolutely adored it. And I would say, even though it's not the number one on my list by a long shot, it's probably the one out of Nolan's filmography that I come back to the most. And if I'm just in the mood for, I'll go and grab The Dark Knight Rises and pop it on. So yeah, absolutely, just such fond memories of this film, and I think a great conclusion to the trilogy. Does it have its problems? Of course it does. I'm not blind to them, which is why it's not number one. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't thoroughly enjoy it. Next, in at number 4, I lied when I said I wasn't being controversial, didn't I? I swear I'm not doing it on purpose. I'd put The Dark Knight, and don't get me wrong, I adore this film. I think this film is superb. There is some of the best acting I've ever seen in modern cinema in this film. The direction, the visual look of it, the music, just the acting, it's all absolutely fantastic. And what can I add to the dialogue about Heath Ledger's Joker that hasn't already been said? I can't. I'll be honest, it's not my favourite portrayal of the Joker. That is Jack Nicholson's portrayal of it. But that is not me taking anything away from Heath's performance or, what he brings to this film. I do really think that it could have been make or break for this film if they had another actor in the role of the Joker. So I hope that says volumes about, Heath's performance and how I feel on it. I don't know what it is about the film that just makes me sort of not have it higher on this list. But there's just definitely something about it that I can't quite put my finger on. It is a fantastic crime drama. I just don't know that it's a great Batman film, if that makes sense for me. And I don't know if that sounds like a contradiction in terms, because it is a Batman film, but it's a really good crime drama. Like, obviously it's heavily influenced by Heat, and you can feel that. And it feels like a really worthy successor to Heat, but does it feel like a Batman film? Not necessarily. But then again, it's got, the greatest, I think, portrayal of live-action Two-Face we've had. It's got an amazing Joker. Like I said earlier, it's visually stunning. The script's great. The story beats are great. It's just a great film. I don't think there's anything I can say about The Dark Knight that hasn't already been covered, in depth on the internet already. So we'll move on to my number 3 pick, which is Interstellar. I loved Interstellar. I've only seen this film twice, but this film holds a special place for me because the emotions that it evokes are just really, really special. And I love it when a film is able to do that, when it sort of it makes you think of a time in your life, or it makes you think of, of certain people, or, an emotion that you felt like. If film can do that for me, then it's a great film. I love the story of exploring the further planets, and I know a lot of people sort of complain at the sort of the time travel-y aspect of it, where he's sort of manipulating space and time, and it's doing the bookcase bit or whatever. And I really love that. That bit spoke to me and reminded me so much of one of my favourite sci-fi films of all time, Contact. And I have to believe that this has been, an influence on Nolan when making this film. Matthew McConaughey is note perfect in it as the lead. Jessica Chastain is superb as well. And again, it's one of those where just the cast of characters around them, the cameos that turn up, and then the regular cast are brilliant. And the bit at the end, where he's finally reunited with his daughter, is nothing short of heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. It really sort of can't imagine what that character must be going through, what they've sacrificed, what they've had to give up, but what they've gained at the same time. And I just think it's a beautiful film, I think is the way I would describe Interstellar. And so that's why I put it in at number 3 on this list. In at number 2, I probably kind of gave this away a little bit earlier when I mentioned that it was my favourite of the trilogy of films. My favourite Batman film that Nolan's done, and my second favourite of his films, is Batman Begins. Now, this wasn't always the case, but this is an opinion that I formed after, being able to enjoy this trilogy for, 10 years at this point of a full trilogy, and being able to enjoy this film for 15 years or more. I adore Christian Bale's performance as Batman. I really love Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow and Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. I think that they're absolutely inspired choices, and it was really nice to see them delve into the lore of Batman more and not just do another film where it's Joker or Penguin or the Riddler. And, you know, it was really brave of them in 2005, given that this was the comeback film for Batman, to not use A-list villains, at least to the public anyway. I feel like Christian Bale is strongest as Batman here. Like, the voice isn't too silly, and I don't know, I just feel like he's giving it everything it needs here, whereas I can pick holes in his performance in the sequel, like in Rises, his voice is too silly. And I always get the impression in The Dark Knight that he's a little disinterested. That could just be me, but I don't know, that's kind of the vibe I get off the screen. But with this one, I feel like he's 100% there, and loving it. Michael Caine is superb as Alfred. Gary Oldman doesn't get the love that he deserves for playing Commissioner Gordon in this series of films. He's brilliant. Again, Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman are top notch. I didn't mind Katie Holmes, though. I do wish that Maggie Gyllenhaal had been able to play the part in the first one, because she's one of the standouts of The Dark Knight. But yeah, just overall, I love this film. I think it's the most faithful adaptation of Batman that Nolan's done, and I think that's why it sort of ranks so high for me. Whereas the other ones, it's definitely more like a Christopher Nolan film. It's kind of like the Tim Burton thing, like where 89 Batman is a Batman film, and then Batman Returns is like a Tim Burton Batman film. And whereas for me, the Tim Burton thing worked a bit more. For me, with the Nolan side of things, it's like, you know, it certainly works, don't get me wrong, but it's like it doesn't tick as many boxes as where he's just adapting the works that he's got and sort of putting his twist on it rather than it being his project. I hope I'm making sense anyway, but that's my rationale for popping it in at number 2. And in at number 1, we have my favourite Christopher Nolan film of all time. Surprisingly, it's one that he didn't write himself. It's another adaptation, which I don't know, maybe that's the way... Maybe that's the way he should go. I don't know, you know, have the framework there for him, and then him put his magic onto it. That's maybe a discussion for another video. But yes, in at number 1, we have The Prestige. Set against the backdrop of Victorian London, we've got 2 competing stage magicians. Now, there is an outtake where I said musicians because I've got music on the brain. I'm not going to show you the outtake, but I'll let you know that I mucked it up. And they are played fantastically by Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. And initially at the start of the film, they're working together, and then after an accident ends up going wrong on stage. Basically, trick goes wrong on stage, and Hugh Jackman's character's wife dies in the accident. He blames Christian Bale's character for it, and it then becomes a revenge story, but also a story of them trying to better each other as they become 2 individual magicians. And there's the trick of the disappearing man, and Hugh Jackman's character spends most of the film trying to work out how Christian Bale is doing this trick, the disappearing man, and transported man, sorry, I do apologise. And he's sort of like, both characters descend into madness from 2 opposite ends of this story, and it's following them sort of on this twist and turn journey. And then he sort of is able to, Nolan, that is able to, you know, weave in real people from the time, you know, like Nikola Tesla and, you know, and sort of his inventions and things like that. And it's just a really, really well done adaptation and story. There's some subtle differences from the books, which I'm glad that Nolan changed. The ending of the book is different, as one of the clones ends up living to the year of basically 1995, and the story's told from the perspective of like great-great-grandchildren. And I don't know that would have translated well to this telling of that story. But yeah, I absolutely adore it. The film looks beautiful, the music's great. Every single person in it brings their A game with the acting, and the direction, and just the look of it from Christopher Nolan is just absolutely superb. So that has been my ranking, my top 11, if you like, of Christopher Nolan's films. How would you guys rank them? Let me know in the comments down below, and are there any that we agree and disagree on? I do appreciate, so when I was going through this list, when I wrote it, I didn't think it was maybe that controversial, but as I'm saying them out loud and talking to the camera, I'm thinking, Oh, I don't know, a lot of people would necessarily agree with me here, so I would really be interested to hear your thoughts and your commentary down below, and it'd be great to get a bit of a discussion going, so please do get involved. If you've liked the video, drop it a thumbs up, let me and let YouTube know to keep making videos like this for you. It's really encouraging to get those thumbs up. And if you are coming across me for the first time with this video, hello and nice to meet you. Please think about subscribing to the channel. That way you're helping the channel to grow, but I can also keep you around for future videos and get to know you better in due course. Above all else, folks, take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon for my next video. But bye for now.